version of the Code of Jewish Law, chapter 80, and we're up to 87, number 87. We might even finish the chapter today.
Oh, wow.
Chapter
Hope everyone
80.
has a l'chaim that they can celebrate with. Okay.
Okay.
87. Okay.
Don't play music.
That's, well, yes, sort of. Asala shmiya kol shel shir b'Shabbos b'kli. We did that, sorry. That we, just to remind ourselves, we said that we can't play music with instrument, we can't click our fingers, and that we said that clapping and dancing is only permissible if it's something that's for the covered, for the honor of the Torah. So we gave some examples, you know, like Simchas Torah, during davening, when we sing our Zemiris, the songs around the Shabbos table. So that's when we make it with our, you know, it's actual music or rhythm or something. Let's go to 88. Kol she'ena derech shir, but a noise that's not song, right? It's not song noise. Mutar hashmi, you're allowed to hear it. So v'lechein, therefore, mutar lahakish al adelis kedei sheyiftachu loy. You're allowed to knock on the door, so someone will open it, right? Because that's not music; it's just a sound. So you know, make sure you don't tap out, you know, a whole song over there, you know. But regular knock is fine. The and the like. Someone ask something?
No, someone coughed.
Okay. We allow that.
Yeah, well, let's hope.
But there are those that say the following. That even though you're allowed to knock on the door, but if there's something that's designed specifically to do it, you should avoid that. You're going, for example, you know, a ring that hangs, you know, like a door knocker. In the rings, in one of these brass door knockers or something, or a bell. In this case, we're not talking about, you know, normally we say bell today, we mean an electric bell, which of course we can't use. But you know, they used to have like a little bell, you know, hanging on the door, and you gave it a little ding. Now that was so something like that. There is a view that we can't use those. So we should try and avoid it. So although there is a view that you could use it because it's not a musical instrument, we should try and avoid having those on our doors, or at least that shouldn't be the only thing on our door that someone can knock.
I thought that the bell is not allowed because the Kohen Gadol had bells on his clothes.
Yeah, but here that would have been more like if you played like an instrument. Here, you know, sometimes they hang on the door and you just give it a backwards and forwards or something, like a
shake.
You know, yeah, it's a doorbell. You know, you sort of pull the clapper.
Yeah.
You know, and today most of those have been replaced by electric doorbells, and we'll get to those in a minute because some of us live in places where you know, you're maybe on the 5th floor, and the only way to get into the building is with electric doorbell. So, you know, we'll discuss that in a minute. So v'chein oisem klishos. So also these clocks. That they strike the hours when you press them. So if you press it, it'll tell you the time by dinging the hours. Or you pull a cord or something, and it'll start ringing out the hours. We shouldn't use those on Shabbos or Yom Tov. So of course the clocks that just ding on their own. Certain people have clocks and it'll chime on the hour, however
Cuckoo
many.
clocks.
Yeah. So the ones, if it plays a song, then that becomes problematic. And if it just bangs, like it's 4 o'clock, so it gives 4 chimes, 4 bangs. They're all the same. There's no musical tune or rhythm or anything to it. So those are fine.
Why is it a problem if you're not pulling the chain, if the chain runs for 24 hours?
That's what we said. So the ones that go on their own, we're talking about there were certain types that you would push and they would chime the amount of hours.
Yeah, no, that's something.
Or you pulled it. So that's a problem. But if it goes on its own, some of them just ring, they just chime. Either on the hour, one chime, or some of them chime, let's say, four times at 4 o'clock.
Mine has a bird that comes out and says cuckoo.
Okay. So it's all automatic, so that's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the doorbells.
Rabbi,
Yes.
what if you're knocking on the door and you're going dun 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 dun? Is that a problem?
It's not actually a problem, but you should just try and do a regular knock on Shabbos at least. So unless you have they only open the door if you give the secret knock.
It's a code.
Right. So someone will just come on. Okay. So sometimes people live in buildings and the like, and without the electric doorbell, if you're on the 5th floor or something, they can be knocking as much as they like, and you still won't know they're there, right? So what do we do then? Unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do. So it's all going to depend on really on how your apartment is set up. So I knew someone that they lived was a 3rd floor, and there was an alley along there, on the wall that their window was, and they called out a member of the family's name who actually didn't live at home anymore, and people knew if you heard that, you went down, you let people in. So that's one thing to do. If you get stuck with electric doors, although you can't open them yourself, I think we might have mentioned this in an earlier year, but you can follow someone else in, or if there's a staff or a doorman or something. I went one Shabbos to a hospital, and I was with someone else, and we just had electric doors. So we decided we're going to wait until someone who's not Jewish walks in, and we'll follow them through. Of course, sometimes it's difficult to tell who's Jewish and who's not Jewish. But then we saw this group come with piercings and mohawks and green hair and various things. And we said, all right, for sure they're not Jewish. Let's follow them through. So they walk in, the door's open. We come in right behind them. They turn around. They say to us, Shabbat Shalom, Habibi. They were, unfortunately, young people finished the army service in Israel, touring the world. So messed that one up. But anyway, what can we do? Sometimes, so we need to try, and if we're staying in places like that, they only have electric doors, a hotel, or various things, we're going to need to try and make arrangements before Shabbos with the staff or something. It can get tricky. Otherwise, you're stuck. Can't leave. All right. 89. So Mashama Peiros Zroyim Mipnei Chayva Oif. So we've got a watchman in the field. So that they're with an orchard or some type of field, and their job is to chase away the animals and the birds. Lo yisber kaf al kaf. They shouldn't clap their hands. We tabach kapav or yerechoi, or clap their thighs to scare away the animals. The yerakid baraglov, or literally dance on the feet, but others, stamp their feet. The vrichim to chase them away. Dershu oisem b'chol, the same way he does it during the weekday. So he has to do it differently. And the concern here, although he's allowed to make these noises, the concern is that since generally fields are not in an Erev, if the clapping doesn't chase away the animals, he might pick up rocks and start throwing them at the animals, which, of course, is transporting something on Shabbos in a way you're not allowed to. And that's going to be the topic of our next chapter. But we can't carry or throw or cause to move anything more than 4 amos. And amos is a cubit, from the elbow to the point of the finger. Of course, everybody has a different size arm, so we say an average one. So the 4 amos that you can't carry or throw is approximately 6 feet. And again, we'll go into more detail in the next chapter, but approximately 6 feet. So we're concerned if he's allowed to chase away the animals the same way he does during the week, then he may end up throwing a stone, which is what would happen during the week if they didn't get scared from the normal things that he does. But if he does in an unusual manner, maybe claps the back of his palm onto his hand, or does something else unusual, then that's going to remind him not to throw the rocks. Okay. Number 90. Ein sechakim begoizim. We shouldn't play with nuts on the floor, even if you have flooring. So some people are probably wondering to themselves, I don't normally roll nuts around my floor, but we'll say this is probably the equivalent to the, like playing marbles. They used to use walnuts or various things. So let's go through the issue over here. The concern is, the biblical concern is, and this doesn't just apply to playing nuts, this would apply to ball games. So if the ground is uneven, either there's a little mound or a hole, then since we want to roll the ball or the nuts or whatever it happens to be, then the concern is that we may smooth out the ground. We'll take away the little mound or fill in the hole. And if this is outdoors, this is a problem of plowing. And if this is indoors, if we had a dirt floor, then it's a problem of building, because we're making the floor more usable. So that's why we, in theory, can't play with the ball on Shabbos. Now we're going to talk about today, there's a lot of different things. Yes, you had a question.
Yeah, I thought you're not supposed to play with nuts that are in the shell. And I thought the shell had something to do with it.
Yeah, so the nuts, I guess it's designated before Shabbos. And again, people used to play with, food items or what people used to use.
Oh.
Like jacks, when they throw it up in the air, used to be like little bones, different things. Today, everything's made of plastic, or the marbles, they're not, I guess some of them are glass, or whatever it is. But, people used to use nuts, and as it was something that they planned to do before Shabbos, so it wasn't.
Like in Hanukkah, where you play with the
dreidel. That's right.
Nuts. Right.
So today it's a little bit, there's quite a few differences. So indoors nowadays, and we had this in relation to a previous halakha, previous law, that today the majority of indoor floors, you actually have a floor. You don't have a dirt floor. We actually have flooring of some sort, whether it's wood or cement, then with carpet or tiles or polished wood, whatever it is. So the reason that it says here that you can't do it on a floor, even if you have actual flooring, is because the majority of people did not have flooring. And we're worried that if people get used to playing this game indoors, where there's flooring, they'll say, oh, you're allowed to play it indoors. And then they'll play it in the majority of houses. One of the majority of houses, they have a dirt floor, and then smooth out the floor, which would be building. But today we don't really have that issue because, as we said, as we know, majority of our houses have a proper flooring. The indoors is not a problem. Outdoors. So today there's a lot of areas that are cement or bitumen, the tar, various things, basketball courts, a lot of playing fields or yards even in homes, but sometimes in buildings or in parks or playgrounds. They have the fake turf, over a softball surface or something. So again, it doesn't really apply in these situations. So if someone was going to play with let's say a tennis ball and a tennis court, with separate issue how appropriate it is for Shabbos. We'll discuss that in a moment. But this concept of the concern of us going to smooth out the floor isn't really a concern. So that's today. Mikol Mokim, we shouldn't protest if we see a kid playing with the nuts on the floor or the ball and outdoors, and and the mother's playing with them or something. We shouldn't protest. We should because the kid's not going to listen. That I guess it's not new that children don't listen to the adults. But the word they're not going to listen. And it's better that they should do something without knowing it's a problem than to do something when they've been told that it's a problem and they still do it. So obviously, I guess that depends on the child and the circumstances of various things. So generally today, if it's a proper paved surface, we're lenient and people play, kids at least, play ball. Now, as a side point to this, there are many people who do not use a ball with a valve, right? In other words, like balls need to be pumped up, a basketball or a soccer ball, and it has a valve that you put in the needle and pump it up. And the reason for that is that if the ball is a little bit flat and now you pump it up, that's tikkun keli. That's completing or getting ready a vessel to use it on Shabbos, which we can't do. The truth is, though, it's really only a problem if it's never been pumped up. Right? If it's never been pumped up, because then it really is tikkun keli. If it's just gone a little bit flat, it's not so much of a problem. Although said there are people who, as a custom, rather than a real halacha, as a custom, they don't use these balls on Shabbos. So balls like a tennis ball you could use and different things.
How about basketball?
So basketball, again, that has the valve, that gets pumped up. So never been pumped up before, you can't pump it up on Shabbos. Technically, again, depending on what type of pump you have, a lot of them are electric or hydraulic, different things. But a basic pump, you theoretically could put a little extra air in on Shabbos. But there are many people who, out of custom, don't use those balls on Shabbos.
But can you play basketball on Shabbos? That's what I'm asking.
Well, that was what I was going to mention. Now, even if you have everything, and you're in an Erev and everything, so on Shabbos we should really only do things that add to the spirit of Shabbos. So, a small child, and again, different people mature at different ages. So we're not going to give an exact age, right? We've all met adults who are really children, and we've met some very mature children, I'm sure. But so we won't give an exact age. But children under bar mitzvah, and they're young, And if they want to play ball on Shabbos, you know, they don't really have the maturity to think spiritually. Whether they play ball or a board game or something like that, you know, I wouldn't discourage them. As they get older, you know, some come into their teens. Again, it also depends on their background, right? If you have people that don't have a strong Shabbos background, then, you know, maybe certainly better for them. You know, when I was in high school, you know, they had Mesiba Shabbos, like a little youth group from Shabbos afternoons for, you know, it was really for kids, but they had for our high school classes as well. A lot of the boys who came from who were in the high school, even though it was a religious high school, but they weren't from observant homes, and so they used to play ball sports. You know, so I think it depends who you're working with. You know, if it's a situation where it's technically not an issue. But if you have people that
I wanted to this whole concept reminds me of an incident that happened about just what you're talking about. And I was Makar many years ago and whatever. I was out in my outreach area. I suppose we're all Chabad here, right? So this was a comment made by somebody outside Chabad about this very thing. So I was working at a school along with some Chabad teachers. My Rebbitzin was there outside, and some of the kids from the neighborhood that they have over on Shabbos ran by and said, "Oh, hello, Rebbitzin. We really had fun on Shabbos at the ball game or playing ball. We really enjoyed ourselves at your house on Shabbos with the ball game." So the rabbi that was standing around there, he was, I think, the rosh of the whole school there. He looked at her with a raised eyebrow and said, "Ball? You play ball on Shabbos?" He was from a different group, not Chabad. And she was embarrassed because she knows what you're talking about, but it was outreach and there were kids and they were enjoying it. So she laughed it off and said, "Well, you know, that these people, it's outreach. And a lot of them wouldn't have Shabbos. If it weren't for our house, we open it up and so the rabbi, so we live out in outreach. So this is the punchline is the rabbi looked at her and said, "Oh, they live out there in the boonies? These Jews live out there? Well, that's their problem." In other words, it's not, ball playing is not okay, but that's their problem for these Jews that live out there, wherever you are out there in Klippitsville in outreach, that's their problem. They, you know,
yeah,
I don't know. I always remember that comment.
So I think we have a few levels here. So level number one is that if it's actually a, you know, proper earth field, you know, you have regular grass or regular dirt or something, so then it's problematic. Then Torah we've learned that we can't play with the ball in the area because we're worried we're going to smooth it out. So then, you know, if we have people that are going to listen, again, we said, if the children aren't going to listen, don't say anything. So if the people who don't understand at all what Shabbos is, better not to say anything, because better for them to do something unknowingly than something that's they knowingly know there's a problem. So, but if it's like you know, paved or the fake turf, or you know, there's tar or bitumen, or you know, like a lot of parks and fields or parking lots, or they're playing the driveway. So then technically, again, if they're in an Erev or a yard or a closed area, they're not technically doing anything wrong. It's a question of the spirit of Shabbos. And that was really the point I was saying, you know, the spirit of Shabbos, if you have people that are able to appreciate at this stage what the spirit of Shabbos is, so then we encourage them to get more involved. You know, we sing, we learn, we you know, we discuss, you know, it's a different time. But if they're not at the age or maturity or background to yet appreciate what that means, then if some of the time, you know, they want to play with a ball in the driveway or play Connect Four or something, you know, one of those games, and so they technically keeping Shabbos, even if it's not the spirit of Shabbos, you know, I don't think it's a terrible thing. You know, we discussed the other week, don't recall last week, the week before, about playing with Lego, right? So we said that, you know, it's technically allowed because they're not designed to stay permanently in place. So it's not really building, but it probably isn't the spirit of Shabbos for teenagers who understand what Shabbos is, or adults to be playing Lego. But for little kids, again, aren't at the age or the maturity, or if they don't have the background. So, you know, let them play Lego. And sometimes as parents, when it's our little children, we play with them too. Even though for us, perhaps, you know, it wouldn't be an appropriate Shabbos activity. But, you know, just keep a simple example. The 2-year-old's rolling a little ball, and we'll say a ball without a valve, because we said, although, you know, many people avoid that. And so the parent rolls with them, you know, and that's, you know, part of being a parent, as we all, as those who have children, and say it's part of being a grandparent as well, is that, you know, we stop our own time and our own interests in various things to be there for the children. And even though we could perhaps spend our part of our Shabbos afternoon more productively, you know, spiritually in a Shabbos way, but if the kids or grandkids are there, you know, we spend time with them on their level. So things to bear in mind. So that's with the ball. 91. The Inyan Kippur Begodim. Now, folding clothes. And this means folding on the crease, particularly folding on the crease. The Yesh Harbe Chiluki Dinim, it's complicated. There are a lot of laws. And this is one of the things about the abbreviated code of Jewish law that we're studying at the moment. It doesn't always go into a lot of details. You know, if someone would study the chapters of the laws of family purity in this book, you find that every second paragraph, you know, it says, well, if it happens, ask a rabbi. And if that happens, ask a rabbi, right? So it's not really telling you what it is, but because there's so much more detail and different layers that can go into it, it's at least telling you if something happens, this is something you need to ask a question about. And someone who has the in-depth knowledge, hopefully has in-depth knowledge, will be able to help you out. So again, over here it's just saying that there's lots of potential issues. Therefore, when the Kabbalah Shum Beged, you shouldn't fold any clothes. So I think 2 weeks ago, we discussed about folding a talis on Shabbos. So again, this folding that I was talking about folding in or on the creases. You know, so folding a talis on the creases is definitely problematic. But folding it not on the creases, or if you don't have creases in it, then you could technically fold your talis. If that makes it easier.
Oh.
Not many questions today.
Well, I have a question. Let me get back to where.
Okay, please.
What was that you said about a ball with a valve? Even before Shabbos, you're not allowed to pump it up?
No. So before Shabbos, no problem. We're just saying on Shabbos, a ball that has never been pumped up. So, you know, it's just bought from the store. We decided we're going to use this ball.
Yep.
So we can't pump it up for the first time on Shabbos.
Okay, not to pump it up for the first time. I
Yeah.
got that
Can't pump it for the first time. That's like preparing a keli. It's like the last
like
touch
building
to
something.
make something
Yes.
work. So that's problematic on Shabbos. If it needs a small touch up, you know, small, you know, little pump, technically you could do that. Again, providing the pump that you're using is a pump that you can use on Shabbos. That could be a, you know, potentially different issue. You know, can't use electric pumps and the like. But presuming it's a pump we can use on Shabbos, technically you could give a little touch up. But there are many people who have a custom, so it's not a legal requirement, but they have a custom not to use a bowl with a valve on Shabbos because of the pumping up from scratch issue. And so only use a ball, like a tennis ball, or there's other sort of little kids balls that don't have a valve. So I'm not saying you can't use a bowl with a valve at all, but if you could use a different one, use a different one.
Oh, while I'm asking questions,
Yes.
I was writing something down and I missed it. Why can you not fold on the creases?
So folding on the creases, that actually is, it's actually a offshoot of laundry. It's like ironing, putting it, neatly into the creases and pressing it down. So
Part of laundry.
So the same would be, if you have trousers, it's got normally folded along the crease and hang it on the hanger. So we couldn't do that on Shabbos either. So, you don't have to throw them on the floor to get creased, put them over something, but we avoid folding in the creases on Shabbos. Thank God I generally don't wear women's clothes. I should say not at all, not this generally. So I'm not sure if there are clothes that also get folded on the creases like that, like trousers or a talus. So I didn't use any of those examples, but if they are, the same principle applies. 92. Talus achos ba ha'or. Now, when we say a talus here, we don't mean like a talus for davening. We mean any garment. So a garment catches on fire. So before we go into here, I just want to, preface from another angle. We're not talking about there's any potential danger to life here. Okay? So obviously, fire can be very dangerous. And if someone's clothes catch on fire while they're wearing them, God forbid, it can be extremely dangerous. And or various things. So as we know, any life-threatening situation or even potential life-threatening situation, overall Shabbos, and if someone's on fire, God forbid, we do whatever needs to be done to put the fire out, to protect the person. Here what we're talking about is property. So a garment as an example, something catches on fire and there's not a danger to life. So there's no danger to life, no potential danger to life. It's a matter of financial loss. So generally on Shabbos, we can't put out a fire for financial loss. So God forbid if someone's in that situation, and again, providing there's no danger to life, then unfortunately one has to let it burn. But here we're talking about this garment. So you can pour liquid on the clothing, not on the fire, but let's say all around. You could soak the rest of the garment. So when the fire itself travels along to the place where it's now wet, the cover will become extinguished. And so this could be anything, sometimes, if you can put bowls or bottles of water around a fire so it shouldn't spread, it'll reach to there. And then, even if in the Talmud, it speaks about using clay jars or, earthenware jars. So when the fire got to it, they would actually explode, because the heat would crack the earthenware. And then all the water would spill out. It's like would make a big gush, and that would put out the fire. But all of this is indirectly, because you're not putting the water on the fire itself. So again, using the example of a garment, or let's say there's a table or something, and it's spreading, put all water around it, put lots of water there, and it'll go out in the sun. But I do again want to emphasize, this is only if it's not going to get out of hand. right? So outdoors somewhere, it's on cement, it's a garment. In theory, if you walked away, the only loss would be the garment because the fire's not going anywhere. As an example. But indoors, you have to be very careful. God forbid a curtain, can very quickly become the whole house. God forbid. And although generally, in theory, you could evacuate the house and everyone could be safe, but often if a house fire gets out of control, then next door, et cetera, et cetera. So here we're talking about, again, I can't emphasize enough, we're only speaking about a situation where the only issue is loss of property. So then we can't put water on the fire directly. We put it on in the area or elsewhere on the garment, and we'll let the fire extinguish itself. Now, of course, in a situation where it could get out of hand, God forbid, if we have time, and the means to do the same thing, so we can have the fire be extinguished indirectly, then we should try and do that. But if there's any concern at all that can get out of hand and it's going to be a danger to life, God forbid, then of course we just need to take care of the fire. Put out fire extinguishers, hoses, whatever there is. Okay. 93, the last one in the huge chapter 80. So we celebrate. Yes.
A question: is there a concept of not just putting out fires, but any of the things that you might not be allowed to do, that you can do them if there would have been great financial loss?
No. Well, let's clarify that just a little bit. If there's anything that's a biblical part of the actual prohibition, then no. There's nothing we can do to avoid financial loss. If it's a rabbinic decree, a fence around the Torah, then there are times that we can. So I'll give an example. Muksa, right? So muksa is a fence to protect us. A classic case of muksa, how it protects us. Muksa are things that have no purpose on Shabbos, so we can't move them. So classic example, a pen. So the biblical problem is writing on Shabbos. We're not allowed to write on Shabbos. And writing means making any symbol or pictures or drawing or various things. Anything that has meaning or a design. So if a person was allowed to play with a pen, and a lot of people, they like to play with things in their hands while they're speaking. And then, a lot of people like to doodle while they're talking or thinking about something. So if a person's allowed to play with a pen, then absentmindedly, they could very easily end up writing something on Shabbos. So the sages, and this is already in biblical times, the prophets made a decree of muksa. So the muksa is you can't even move the pen. So that way, what happens if the person absentmindedly, what do? They have a pen. They go, oh, muksa, and they put it down. So they never actually broke the biblical prohibition. So it's called a fence around the Torah. So that's what really rabbinic decrees are. Again, most rabbinical decrees that are in halacha from the times of biblical times. So an example would be muksa. You're allowed to move muksa for financial loss. So let's say, maybe not a plastic pen, but a more valuable pen or something else that's muksa. Someone left the stereo outside, and stereos on the front lawn, generally, if no one's watching them, have a habit of growing legs and disappearing. Or it might rain, or maybe the sun is going to beat down on the things and ruin it. So therefore, in order to avoid the financial loss, you're allowed to pick it up, preferably in an unusual way, not the normal way you transport it. but again, it depends how heavy it is. You don't want to break it either. And then you can move it to somewhere where it's protected or safe. So that would be an example. So generally speaking, something that's a biblical mandate, financial loss, unfortunately, is not a factor. It's part of having, I guess we'll say, self-sacrifice for our Judaism. But often, if it's of biblical nature, there are circumstances where, when they made the decree, they in the beginning they never made it under certain circumstances. So it's not like all the financial loss overrules. They never made it. Another example would be we're not allowed to ask a non-Jew to do something for us on Shabbos. So technically, according to the Torah, you're allowed to. But this was brought in Greek times, when the Greeks occupied Israel. It was the first time you had Jews and non-Jews sort of living together. Actually, in the Babylonian, this was in the Babylonian exile, we had Jews and non-Jews living in close proximity, and people could have a non-Jew follow them around all day and do everything for them. Light fires, put on lamps, turn it off, turn on the oven, turn off the oven. And the problem is, if that happens, there's no Shabbos. I mean, technically the person's keeping Shabbos, but in practice, feeling of Shabbos, the concept of Shabbos just doesn't happen. So there was a rabbinic decree that we can't ask a non-Jew to do something for us in Shabbos. But again, they made many exceptions. So if someone's unwell, and here we're not talking about life-threatening, just regular unwell, they're in bed with the flu, and they need the light off to sleep, you're allowed to ask a non-Jew to turn the light off for the needs of the community. So it's the shul that doesn't have the light on. So we can ask for the needs of the community, or heat and cold, because that can lead to sickness. If someone's it's in the middle of winter and they need someone to light the fire, because in many places in winter, not in Phoenix generally, but in other places without heat, even though the life is not a danger at that particular moment, and maybe we've got enough layers, we could blanket up in and put our coat and sweaters. But you don't have to. You're allowed to ask the non-Jew to put on the heat. And in places where it's very hot, you're allowed the same concept. You're allowed to ask them to put on cooling. Talmud doesn't really discuss the cooling because they didn't have it, but it's the same concept. So that when they made the decree, they never made it under these circumstances. So the same applies to certain things with great financial loss.
Okay.
Okay.
When I have a question too.
Yes.
When we studied about building a tent or destroying a tent, everything that you do, they called it building. Like if you take a piece of paper or a box and you close the box, it's building. Or tear the box open, it's destroying. Now, a box has nothing to do with building, but...
Yeah, it didn't mean a box like a cardboard box like we have now. It's like a trunk.
Yeah.
Or a crate.
What about a package that's arrived and you didn't have time to open, you want to open it on Shabbos? Is that okay?
A package, well, if the package arrived on Shabbos or Yom Tov, then we can't open it. It's muktzah. But if it came before, if it's a non-food item on Shabbos, then we're gonna have to wait till after Shabbos. And on Yom Tov, not only food, but anything that's is gonna somehow enhance Yom Tov. So I don't know, new tableware or something.
Mm-hmm.
Then we could open it up. But that's a separate issue. So the building though is we're talking about they had, I don't think too many people have them at home, but like those big trunks they used to have, and it's not on hinges, because again, if it's on hinges, no problem. And when you put it on, it closes, it's a full closed, proper, solid item. So that's why it's like building. And we also said any containers that are not designed to stay closed. So, jars, various things, that's no problem because the design to be open and closed is not permanent.
I remember a case where we were studying on Saturday and there was a package of books that arrived before Shabbos. And everybody says, no, you can't open it on Shabbos to give the books to the students. Was that correct or was that incorrect?
That's a good question. Meaning, if you knew they came before Shabbos,
yeah,
and you were planning to open it, so it's probably going to depend. If it's came like Amazon, they're properly taped and various things. Really should have waited. You need to wait till after Shabbos. But if it's something that's not sealed, properly, just sort of.
If it's not sealed, you can open.
Yeah, the store delivered it. Just need to give it a little pull or something. It's not something. It's the things that are really taped for shipping, they're designed to be almost permanent. And it was, if you left it, it'd be there for the next 10 years. Yeah. So that's problematic.
Okay.
Yeah. So without seeing the packaging, we're going to presume or something like that. And so it was, the right decision. Okay. 93. Now we can't make our beds on Shabbos if it's for after Shabbos. So let's just discuss this concept. So in general, we can't do something on Shabbos that's a preparation for the weekdays. Only the reverse. Right? Of course, we can do pretty much anything on a weekday for the honor of Shabbos. And here we're giving an example of making a bed because making a bed is something that there's no, the act is not a malacha. It's not something that breaks Shabbos. The only issue here is so when you get into bed Saturday night after Shabbos, there's a nice, neat, comfortable made bed. So you're preparing on Shabbos for after Shabbos. So that's the problem. If you're someone who likes to have a little nap Shabbos afternoon, which is not a bad thing to do, short nap, don't want to sleep away the whole Shabbos, but a little nap. Then in the morning, there's no problem to make the bed because you're not making it for after Shabbos, you're making it for be able to enjoy it again later on Shabbos. So that's no problem. And it's not only making a bed, this could be lots of things. So let's say, for an example, you could technically, with cold water, you can wash your dishes on Shabbos. It's not breaking Shabbos if you wash it with cold water. Of course, you have to be careful not to use a sponge, different things. But presuming you washed it in a permissible way, that's permissible. But you can really only wash it if you're going to need it later on Shabbos. Right? So it's just to wash all the dishes and put them away, that's doing something on Shabbos for after Shabbos. Now, again, it depends because sometimes you need the space. Right? Sometimes you need the space. Let's say you have things on the table, you don't really have counter space, and you need so there's nowhere else to put it, and you need the table space for something else on Shabbos. Then putting it away in various things is actually a preparation for Shabbos itself, because you need to move them somewhere to get that space. But if it's just to put it away so you don't have to wash the dishes after Shabbos, Sunday you're going out somewhere and you therefore want to do it now, so that's a problem because you're preparing on Shabbos or after Shabbos. So anything that's like that, anything that technically is not a problem, but the reason we're doing it now is to aid us after Shabbos, then we can't do that. Okay. So making a bed example we're using. Even though there's time on Shabbos to have a nap to sleep again later. Nevertheless, since this person does not have the intention to use the bed again on Shabbos, then he's preparing for after Shabbos, and that's prohibited. Of course, like I said, if you're intending to have a nap later on Shabbos, then there's no problem. So anything like that. Well, who here actually started chapter 80 from the beginning? Well done. So Mazel Tov to all the people, whoever's finished the whole thing. I joined you, I think, was it 23? Have a quick look back. No, it was later. 28. So I joined you on the number 28. So whoever you learnt with beforehand. So those who are finished, Mazel Tov. It's one of the, I think maybe the largest chapter in the book. It's an accomplishment.
Was the Rabbi Yossi that started.
Okay, very nice. So you deserve a l'chaim.
L'chaim.
It's, you know, we're currently in a period of time in the calendar called the 9 days, which coincidentally actually lasts for 9 days. So it's not only called the 9 days, it lasts 9 days. And it's,
I thought it was Sunday, the last day.
Yes, it is. But that's the 9th day. But it's a period of time, the Jewish calendar, when we're a little less happy. And we're not really meant to have, do things that make us extra happy. But one of the exceptions is a siyum, a completion of a major section of Torah learning. So those who are making the siyum and are celebrating, this is permitted type of joyous activity you're allowed to do during the 9 days. So well done, Mazel Tov.
We have some wine. You're saying, could I make a l'chaim on wine now? Or
on wine? No, probably not wine. Well, if we, not so much this chapter, but if we would have made a siyum on a tractate of the Talmud, then technically we could have meat and wine if we had a meal to celebrate it. I don't know if the meal, us having a meal together, counts over Zoom. Maybe it does, but you know.
Okay, but Rabbi, aren't we going to do, some shuls are going to do, you know, Eicha on Zoom?
Okay.
Does that count?
Does it count? That's well, depends what you're doing with it. You know, generally speaking, when we don't feel an obligation by listening to anything over electronic devices, because you're not actually hearing it. You're hearing electronic impulses. You know, they've taken apart the sound, they've transported it, it's traveled the electronic impulse, and then it makes a copy of the sound. You're not hearing the actual sound itself. So right now, you're not actually hearing my voice. You're hearing electronic impulses that, you know, convey the voice. So if someone's doing something for you, so like, let's say, reading something you need to hear, let's just say Havdalah as an example. So unfortunately, you can't fulfill the mitzvah of Havdalah over Zoom or telephone or various things. Now, when it comes to Eicha, if the person's going to be reading it and people read along, and you need them to read it so you can actually read along, then you're reading it for yourself. If a person can't read along, but they're not going to be able to do anything anyway, you know, in other words, it's hear this, you know, hear this over Zoom, or don't do anything, then even if they technically didn't feel the obligation, then it's definitely better for them to be involved and get to the spirit of the day and to do something. But you know, different people, you know, today's circumstances, different people, different states of health, different ages, different levels of risk. So, you know, I don't want to give general advice to people over a group. I mean, it's an excellent question you asked, but I don't want to give a general advice. I think each person's look at their own circumstances, and life in general is about risk, right? You know, I mean, God forbid even crossing the road, you know, there's a certain degree of risk. Everything we do has a degree of risk, but we want it to be a manageable degree of risk. So if you're able to go and participate in person and it's a manageable degree of risk, you know, we highly recommend it. If you can't, well, you know, you can only do the best that you can do. And if it's the best that you can do, Hashem only expects us to do our best. So even if you technically didn't fulfill the obligation, you know, hearing directly someone else's voice, still, if you've done your best, and that is your best, then Hashem appreciates people's effort. Judaism is very much about the journey more than the destination. It's what people put into it. You know, it's how much they try, it's their feeling, just as much as results. Now, generally speaking, if we try and learn the right thing and we put in the effort, we get the results also. But it doesn't always work that way. You know, where life is not always black and white. So I apologize, didn't directly answer your question specific for you. I don't know your full circumstances, but I hope I gave enough information that lets you
Yeah,
make your decision.
thank you. You did. You gave me a lot of, thank you so much for the info.
Rabbi, you said about finishing a tractate of Talmud.
Yes.
How much is it, a tractate?
Well, it depends. Some are longer than others. You know, some have 170 odd
What do
pages.
you call it? What do you call it in Hebrew?
Masechta.
Oh, Masechta. Okay. So that's actually a whole book.
Yes. And you know, there are shorter ones. You know,
shorter
but,
and longer books. Yeah.
That's right. But you know, sometimes the shorter ones can be more complicated. So it's not necessarily, unless you've learned it before, not necessarily any quicker. But we have made a siyum on chapter 80.
We finished about a quarter, I think.
Sorry?
We finished about a quarter of the book, so we are on the way.
Okay. We made this is a very large chapter, significant. And again, mazel tov to all those who finished the entire chapter, started at the beginning. And I guess those who didn't start at the beginning eventually will finish Laws of Shabbos, start at the beginning again, and you'll, when you get up to whichever number you started, you'll have completed as well.
Right.
So wonderful goal to work towards. Well done to everybody who finished chapter 80.
I have a question about the 9 days again. Is
Yes.
Tisha B'Av Sunday?
Sunday, yes, this year, yes.
So Shabbos is still during the 9 days. Can we have wine with Shabbos dinner?
Yes, so Shabbos, there's, you know, God forbid, even a real mourner, and we should never know from such things, doesn't do any external signs of mourning. And here, this is a less degree than someone who's actually sitting shiva and actually mourning. So generally speaking, Shabbos, everything is as usual. So we eat the meals, Shabbos meals, we drink the wine. You know, you can sing the songs that you normally sing around the Shabbos table, you know, and various things. As a matter of fact, there are many communities that are extra joyous on this Shabbos than even other Shabbos, because it's our highlight during the 9 days that we're able to have joy in a way that so we even more joyous. So it should probably be
I thought you were going to speak about the incident with Rabbi Akiva being joyous at the destruction of the temple, at finding out about the destruction.
Yeah, well, seeing the scenario, yeah, well, that too, that's a mindset. That's true. But this Shabbos, enjoy, have an incredible Shabbos. We always at the end of the year wish everyone have a wonderful Shabbos. But this week even more so. Okay.
Hey.
So I guess